I've always been a curious person. I like to know how things work and to understand, why something spins or why it broke or why it fell. And my father was in computer science and always brought me to his office at NASA in the time when he was working on some of the later Apollo missions. And so I grew up with a sense of, and I was very, very young, but my early memories are literally blinking lights. And I just had an appreciation for science and technology and came up through the computer science ranks and really liked to understand how things worked and be able to sort of control technology. So then you learn to write code. My father taught me to program when I was about 7, 8. And I wasn't allowed to have the video games in the house. So my dad said, if you want to play a game, you have to write it. And as the trade-off, I will give you all the quarters and all of your friends all the quarters in the world when you go to the arcade. You just can't have any of this in the house. And I now have a Pac-Man arcade game in my kitchen because that's my get back. But I learned to code, I learned to love it. Followed the computer science track and the math track because I just enjoyed it. But always had the fun stuff too. I played tennis, I played piano, and had friends that thought I was a nerd, so at least I had good balance. And then in grad school was doing the high performance computing work, really to do weather forecasting and put parameters together to look at what makes a thunderstorm a severe storm. And it's really the same math as putting any other kind of big data together and trying to understand a trend a lot sooner. Taking advantage of what a computer does, works fast, looked at the cryptography route with that and never looked back. So that was sort of the first combination at Georgia Tech of cybersecurity and high performance computing. So I was the first computer science student at Georgia Tech to get a PhD focused on cybersecurity. I was probably their first cybersecurity student at that level. Georgia Tech has a whole college of computing, which is why I chose it. And it has the ability to take hardcore computer science and then apply it to something that interests you in addition. We looked at how do I help the computer process all the math it takes to do what they called in those days, and still is, strong security. So RSA or DSA crypto keys, without using so much of the computing power it destroys, say, the image on the screen. Now these days they do a lot of that in hardware, but it's still the same principle. How do you allocate resources the right way? And I ended up patenting that, licensing it, starting a small company around it, selling it. And I think being at Georgia Tech and in the College of Computing provided the environment to be able to figure out how to put all that together. And certainly the people, I would say, again, Carsten Schwann was my advisor, and Santosh Shokhani was the crypto person, the external, and he was an expert in public key cryptography. And basically I was lucky. I was lucky to be able to chase something and find people that were experts to support it. There is a big gender imbalance in cybersecurity, but it's not because of one thing. Again, it's because I think cybersecurity is not known as something that someone with maybe a public relations background or a law background or any other type of non-computer science background or non-crypto background would go into, but it's so broad. We need people, again, it's just like diversity, you need people from all backgrounds to actually solve the problem. And groups like this today that CIT and others are brought together will give women a chance to meet each other. And for many of us, today has been also a chance to run into other women in the field that we've known for years and maybe haven't seen each other in a while. This is a tight community, and bringing some of the younger generations in, not that any of us are that old, but bringing some of the new members in, I think will also help and allow them to embrace that identity. Look, it's fun. When you're the one in the room that understands how something works, you have an edge over everybody else. And it's not a power thing, but it's more, I know why that happened. And that's fun. So when I started, I remember I was in probably early 2000s, I was in a magazine for the top 20 women in cybersecurity. And one of my colleagues, it was pretty funny, he was just joking with me. He said, not only are you in the top 20 women, I think this is all of them, right? And that was probably true then. And it's grown. It's grown because there's a lot of talent out there. I think what we're seeing is we need to channel more of the talent. The people I have seen be the most successful are on sort of the opposite ends of the spectrum. There's the hyper-talented, introverted, all IQ, no EQ people that just invent great stuff. They will be successful and they will help us, but they can't, that skill set without the complement of the EQ side can't transfer the knowledge into the people that have the skills of taking it forward and building the community. So the people, what you need is on both ends. You need people that are very good integrators and social animals, and then you need very, very technical folks to build things, understand things, and protect things at a technical level, but to take that technology and do things like you hear people say, build by design, or get ahead of the curve, or I don't know, follow the puck where it's going to go. You need 90% of that is understanding all the other areas besides computer science. So the person that's going to be the hot commodity in this field is the person that can do both. About 2 years ago this month, I did the Russian cyber negotiations with my boss at the time, Undersecretary Suzanne Spalding. And so we were the two representing at the highest level, the Department of Homeland Security, to talk with the Russian government, with other parts of the US government as well, but to talk in Geneva with the Russian government about many things, including how we were going to share more open source cyber information. Right? And there are all sorts of tensions with this. Not only, of course, you bring these two countries together in a very cold conference room, where it's obvious that it's a very cold conference room because no one will go to each other's country at that point for that particular conversation. But I think it's more, we had two women representing us. Suzanne did the first day. I was somewhere else with the leadership. Then I came in and did the subject matter expertise day on exactly what are the mechanisms of this. And it's fascinating, and it's something I'll never forget, going back and forth with a Russian ambassador about what kind of encryption we're going to have. Whose encryption is it going to be? Hardware or software? And I'm thinking to myself the whole time, you realize this is open source. But it was just a fascinating conversation, and if anything, it's just to build some discussion channels, right? So, some confidence building measures. And I remember that afternoon we did the handoff. Suzanne went to do something else. I took over the senior spot. And I remember after that, one of the ambassador's staff approached me and said, questioned it. He said, "So you're a woman?" And I'm thinking, okay, we got that. And then he said, "And you're a subject matter expert?" And I said, "Yes, this is what I do." And he said, "But you're going to lunch," which was for the seniors only. And I said, "Yes." And I really wanted to say, because I'm really hungry. But in that particular setting, you hold the sarcasm. But it was fascinating to me that he couldn't wrap his head around the fact that there were two women representing cybersecurity. And there were other agencies there representing other parts. But cyber, which is so core in the mathematics to the Russians especially, two women. The only women they had on their team were in the back taking notes, a good 20 feet from the table. So it's just a fascinating moment in my mind that I'll never forget. This is a fun space. Absolutely do it. You will never regret it. You'll never look back. The experiences you can have, from the people you'll meet to the things that you'll do and the missions on which you may contribute, are second to none. It's the opportunity of a lifetime, and we very much need you.